Culture Committee meeting on Tuesday, December 7th, 2021. Appreciate everybody for being here. Before we get started, I just want to remind everybody, after the last meeting, just remember, if you would like to speak, please get my attention and I will recognize you before you begin speaking so that we're not talking over people again and just kind of stay on track. So with that, I did have a consent calendar for us. Resolution RS 2021-1266, Allen Bradford Welsh and others. Approves an application for a child and adult care food program grant from the Tennessee Department of Human Services to the Metro Parks and Recreation Department to provide nutritious meals and snacks for children attending after-school programs in 9 park locations. Resolution 2021-1267 accepts an in-kind grant from the Friends of Warner Parks to the Metro Board of Parks and Recreation to provide funding for the next phase of improvements in Warner Parks. Resolution RS 2021-1268, Lee Allen Bradford Stiles, an amendment approves Amendment 1 to a grant from the Friends of Mill Ridge Park to the Metro Board of Parks and Recreation for the construction of a primitive trailhead at Mill Ridge Park. And lastly, bills on second reading. BL 2021-1016, Van Rees, Hurt, Mendez, and pretty much the entire council. Names the landing and steps in front of the historic Metro Courthouse in honor of the great Diane Nash. So is there anything that anybody would like to pull from consent? All right, with that, do I have a motion on the consent calendar?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of the consent calendar?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. I'll take that. Okay. Now we will move back to Resolution RS 2021-1204, Gamble, Johnson, Allen, Bradford, and Hauser. This appropriates $1.9 million in American Recovery Act funds from Fund Number 30216 to Metro Parks to be used for managing homeless encampments and the renovation and repair of Brookmead Park. Now I see there's a substitute. You don't have it. We don't have to move the bill first before we do the amendment, or it's vice versa.
Vice versa.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get a motion on the bill.
On the substitute.
On the substitute? Okay, let's do that.
I move.
Okay. And second on the substitute?
I'll second.
Okay.
So do we need to go get?
Do we need to get somebody?
Yeah, Dave to.
Yes.
I need somebody to explain this tonight. We talked about it
It was
last
just
time.
out in the.
All right, in that case, let's go ahead and move that to the heel.
You need a sponsor on your.
Okay, there's that was good. All right, Councilmember Gamble, I will recognize you if you would like to go ahead and explain the substitutes
Or
RS 2021-1204.
the 1.9, for the homeless camp.
Oh,
Brookmead Park.
thank you. Yes, so the substitute is being introduced by Councilmember Rosenberg. I support the substitute, and what the substitute does is basically take out everything out of the initial resolution except for the renovation to Brookmead Park. I think most of us agree that those renovations are needed. The Metro Parks Committee came and presented to the ARP Committee overall request for dealing with parks as it relates to the increase of homeless camps that we have in those parks as a result of the pandemic. But after a lot of discussion and deferrals and information, the consensus was that, okay, we will just focus on Brookmead Park with this resolution and allow Metro Parks to come back with a more comprehensive request for all parks, all needs, whether it's staffing, equipment, not just focusing on parks that have the homeless encampments, but all of the parks in our system. So for that reason, I support the substitute we asked for.
They didn't reduce the amount, did they?
Yes.
Well, it reduced from the original amount, but it hasn't reduced for what was asked for Brookmead.
No, the substitute reduces it from 1,933 to 1,260,000.
1 million.
Okay.
1.2.
So I know that it's,
1 million.
so it's
Sorry.
specifically for, so you're talking about the whole resolution or just the Brookmead Park, request?
We were just talking about the substitute for the resolution particular to Brookmead and some other things, but we
Right,
want
so
to understand.
the total amount changed because everything else that was asked for has been taken out, except for the Brookmead Park
Specific.
renovations specifically. And it does include the equipment, as well as the eye in the sky cameras, and there was one other line item, that's escaping me, but,
It was, I believe it was for trash trucks and trucks with power hoses or something.
yes, that's what it was, the power wash.
Councilman Hayer?
The last time I was in here, we talked about the equipment was about over $800,000. And I asked the director why some of that equipment, Public Works, Metro Water and all them have that equipment to use to clean it up. Now, my question is are we putting the cart before the horse to take care of the homeless people? Because I've talked to them about this before, and I said, unless we have a plan for these people, where they're gonna go to do permanent housing. I talked to them about the Haven for Hope program that's down in San Antonio, Texas, which is a transition type of building where they transition people from homelessness, and then they separate them out from people that have mental health problems, people that can work, and people that need permanent housing. If we're gonna spend all this money and then we haven't taken care of the homeless problem, then we're wasting our time, and that's my problem with it. So, when I'm looking at this, it still says 1.9 million. Is it dropping down to 1.2 million and taking that out or not? The equipment?
It's 1.2.
The
Councilor
substitute.
Gamble, if I may.
Yes, that's fine, go
There's
ahead, yeah.
the breakdown on the substitute is 360K in 2 trash trucks, 20,000 in pressure washer rigs. They're on trailers, so they attach to
Right.
trucks. The eye in the sky cameras, and I think that had been some concern. These are specific to Brookmead Park, and so I think we've said to Director Odom previously that, you know, if there's needs in other parks, which I think our constituents have
Right.
expressed to us, that could come through 4% or as a separate thing. So to Councilor Gamble's point, it's kind of focusing in on Brookmead. Trailhead signage, parking lot repaving, curb repair, bollards, paved trails, demo existing bridge and build a new bridge, new decking. It's all very specific, and that gets to the 1.26
Okay,
total.
that's what I wanna
The
know.
capital improvements specific to the physical land are 850K.
And then we've got another meeting coming up next week with the,
With Councilman, or with Vice Mayor Schulman, particular to the homelessness issue. Yeah.
Councilman Nash, did you have a question?
Well, it's been pretty much explained by Councilor Henderson. The eye in the sky cameras, the only ones that are left in there are the ones specifically for Brookmead. The equipment was eliminated except for the sprayers and some trash trucks for kind of help with the.
And it's also been my understanding, and if we got someone from Parks that can confirm, it's my understanding that any money allocated for repairs or fixing the park, that money won't be spent until the actual underlying issue of the camp has been solved.
okay.
And I'll also add that the resolution specifically states that the equipment won't be used to move, disturb, or inconvenience any unhoused that are currently living there. So they would have to be housed before they move forward.
Councilmember Hurd, did you have something you wanted to ask?
Yes, I wanted to ask, are there any security plans, or at least checks? Because I think that there needs to be some periodic, appearances, with them having utilized that space for quite some time. And I'm sure they know ways ins and outs and all of that.
So when you say security, you mean law enforcement
Yes.
checking? We did not discuss that in committee or in any of the other committee meetings regarding this resolution, but I think you bring up a good point. And I guess there's nobody here from Parks. Oh, there he is. Yes. Don't recognize you.
No,
Yes.
I mean, but I was here on the grants, but, like you said, it's, not to disturb. I mean, as she said yesterday, and Director Odom said yesterday in, Budget and Finance, none of this would be, to disturb the current population that's out there.
And I was a little, I know I was in Budget and Finance in the beginning, but, yeah.
Councilmember Hager?
How many park police have y'all got now?
Yeah, that's,
I think it's 22.
I know.
I mean,
22 officers, how many cars?
22?
I don't know how many cars. I mean, they're probably, I would think some of them share because they,
How many parks we got?
Yeah.
we did get, I think we got 5 in last year's budget, but, we have a few that's going, we have some interest in this, upcoming class, academy, at the academy, so we'll see what we get out of that, if anything. We always have some to start.
Councilmember Nash?
And I know Commander Corman has officers that go by and check on there once in a while. I do share Councilman Hager's concern. We need more single-room occupancy supportive housing, and I'm disappointed that, the one at First and Gay, they decided it wasn't a good spot, and they've got a better spot later, but we need to really probably get another 1 or 2 of those online where we can, put people in single. The facilities we have now, the Mission, Father Strobel's, trust me, as a police officer, I bless them, the work they do. There were times where I wouldn't know where to take someone if it wasn't for them. But so many people don't want to go. They're homeless. They don't have the privacy. If they have a drink, they're out of there. And these people need a chance to be able to transition. And, as what Hager said, and I've shared some of the Westlake home out of Portland or Seattle. I've shared that with both chairs of the homeless committee a couple of times, and with the administration. And this new supportive housing that's online comes the closest to those facilities. And we need to maybe move some more of those.
I'll recognize Councilmember Hurt because she's on the committee.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree. I was in Leadership Nashville in 2004, and our study group focused on homelessness. Until we get an administration who's seriously ready to address this issue, it is not going to go anywhere. We've got we've got vacant schools that have been vacant for years, and we're paying electricity. We could have done things in order to kind of help mitigate the problem, but because we have not, we got hotels, all of those things. So, and we've got several, plans that have been submitted to us. So it's really about the political will that this is or is not happening. And I just wanted to make the comment.
I appreciate that comment. I agree with a lot of what you said. Councilmember Gamble?
Just one point to Councilman Hager's point about the need for more resources for parks. We really agree, and that's why I support this resolution, because this will allow parks to come back with a more comprehensive request that includes more staffing for officers, more cars. They have shortages in every area, so.
Well, they can also call Metro Police too. And I know they do that because park police are not always available. And most of these parks are day parks anyway. There's not supposed to be anybody there at night. But it goes back to enforcement.
All right, do we have any further discussion on RS 2021-1204, the substitute? No. All right, so with that, the substitute, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You're on the next one, too.
I don't know why.
That's right, I know. That was sad.
Resolution 2021-1261.
You gotta pass the resolution.
Oh, yes, thank you. So the resolution RS 2021-1204 as substituted. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay. All right, now we will move on to RS 2021-1261 Gamble, Sepulveda, Johnson, Allen, and Stiles. Appropriates $750,000 in American Rescue Plan Act funds from Fund Number 30216 to the Nashville Convention and Visitors Corporation to expand its sponsorship of new and culturally diverse events in Nashville. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And discussion. Go right ahead.
Thank you. As a representative of the ARP committee, this resolution request came to us from the Convention Visitors Bureau, and what they told us is that because of the pandemic over the last 18 months, many community events that provide services to assist our communities had to be canceled. Many of those were fundraising events and annual fundraising events, so it has caused a hardship to the communities that provide these services, as well as to the residents and constituents that they serve. So what this resolution does is provide $750,000 to the Conventions Bureau to provide grants to support these community organizations, most of which are minority organizations or minority programs, such as the Jefferson Street Jazz and Blues Festival, the Fisk Spring Arts Festival. There's a list of events that they are looking to support with this funding, and because of those reasons, the ARP committee felt that this was a worthwhile recommendation, and ask for your support for this as well.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Henderson.
And so, when we have a grant program, and if we're gonna give money into that grant program, can you just speak to kind of how that will be administered? Will it look at a particular geography? Is it for all of Nashville? Is it events of a certain size? I mean, who will make the determination? Because colleagues, we have so many worthy organizations. We often get in that position at budget time, what I call the nonprofit Hunger Games. It's just, it's unfortunate. And so this is great. I fully support it, but I do also want to understand, did they speak to you all as a committee about how they intend to administer it and kind of rank and work through the funding?
We did not get a lot of specifics about how it would be administered. I don't know if there's somebody here from the Conventions Bureau to answer that question. It's a good question, but because there's a list that they provided with, as an attachment to the resolution, that gave us an idea of what kind of programs that they're looking to fund, and they did specify minority programming. There was a Hispanic festival as well on the list. So we didn't get into specifics on how they selected those programs or those organizations. I don't know if these were organizations that they typically give to.
Already worked with previously, so they have a track record.
So
they're just sort of
exactly.
expanding. I guess my follow-on question, Chair, if I may, would just be in approving this and moving it forward, I would ask if they could just report back to our committee or the council, just, how did it go? How did it get dispersed? Was it helpful? Because
I think that's a good recommendation.
because I wonder somewhat, and I'm concerned, not necessarily in a bad way, but a lot of these ARP funds, like, we're doing good stuff that I would like us to continue to do, and so I think we want to make sure to get kind of the oversight and the feedback of some of these ARP disbursements so that we can understand how to operationalize them in the future so they can continue.
Councilmember Nash. And then,
Can I answer her first?
oh, yeah, go right ahead. Sir.
To your point, you're absolutely right. And in the first round of funding with the CARES funding, we did ask for that for all of the organizations that we work with, United Way, Pathway Lending, that administer funds. They gave us monthly reports on the demographics who received those funds, the number of people and everything. We're asking for that for these same allocations.
Okay, great. Good to hear. Thank you so much.
Just FYI, the analysis lists Jefferson Street Jazz and Blues Festival, Jazz Mania, Nashville Jazz Workshop, Native American Powwow, Nashville Pride Festival, Stellar Awards, Black Gospel, Fifth Jubilee Singers Spring Sing, Gospel Music Association Dove Awards, and the Americana Music Awards Festival.
Thank you, Chair Nash. I missed that.
And National Black
analysis.
Caucus of Elected Officials Conference.
Councilmember Hurt.
I was gonna say, thank you, Chair, that those are typically the events that they have supported, and it has provided, and you're absolutely right, it does help sustain. And I know that the American Rescue Plan money was designed in order to reach those community organizations because of such losses that this is going to fulfill. So I wholeheartedly think that this is a very worthy cause, because those particular organizations were not recipients of CARES money and deserve.
Well, is there any further discussion on RS 2021-1261? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right, there's just one last thing. I did invite Director Kent Oliver from Nashville Public Libraries as part of my effort to make sure we know what all's going on with our respective Metro 8 entities. Turn the floor over to him for the next 10 minutes to give us a brief overview and update on libraries.
Well, great. I'll just stand here and
Approximation.
well, thank you for doing this. I enjoyed our virtual meetings that the committee had during the pandemic, and it was a good opportunity. What I thought I'd do today is have a lot of good news, a lot of great things are going on, and then just give you an idea of our challenges that we're facing right now. First of all, and some of you participated, in October we celebrated the fact that we had all of our branches open again, which was a huge deal because we've been working towards that for quite a while as we came out of the pandemic. So that was a wonderful thing. And we're seeing usage increase in the buildings, certs going up, both in person and virtual continues to go up. So that's all very positive. The programming, we have in-person programming going on again, and we also have virtual programming. And I don't know if any of you pop on and look at our board packets each month and see the data, but the number of people we're reaching virtually with our programming is pretty sensational. And we're continuing to work on new ways to enhance the virtual while we still go forward with the in-person, because we know everybody cannot do virtual. We've been involved with the Church Street Park programming, and if you've been following that, we've been drawing crowds of 100 to 150 people for our book talks and our programs, our story times out there. So we think we're enhancing that initiative as well. I have a couple of things to thank you guys for, and one of them is the 4% allocation last year. When we hit 4 million last year, it really started putting us in the space where we should be with an annual allocation to buy books and other materials. And because of that, we've really been able to add a lot of virtual items, ebooks and those sorts of things. So that's been great. Another thing that happened, and this is kind of a one-off, and I don't know if you picked up on it during my presentation last year, the urban libraries in Tennessee have never received state aid at any level that they should have based upon the population we served. And the 4 urban libraries in the state have been lobbying for that for the past several years. And this last year we received $3 million to divide between the 4 of us based on population. So we received almost $1 million from the state last year. And we're tracking that very closely because we're really focusing it on literacy efforts and focusing on the areas with the most need within our communities.
Was that a one-time or?
Well, it's interesting, yeah, that's the question. Half of it was ongoing and half of it was considered one time, but we were also told that we could apply to have the rest made ongoing and permanent, and the Secretary of State has agreed to go forward and try and get that done. Another real one-off, the other thing that we're trying to get done is the Secretary of State has agreed to look at helping us regulate ebook pricing. There's some states in the country that are trying to make sure libraries do not get charged 4 or 5 times as much for an ebook as you would if you went on Amazon. And I think he's going to introduce legislation to try and get that done, which would actually make us one of the leaders in the country on that. So.
That is great to hear. That was going to be one of my questions for you, because I know as far as your 4% allocation, like that ebook piece has been that's great to hear.
It's been a huge thing. And then the other things that are coming up, the allocations that you guys specifically threw into our budget last year for the operational pieces, we're gearing up to do curbside in more locations in a more deliberate way ongoing. And we're also gearing up to open those other locations that have not been open on Fridays at the first of the year as well. So we're really excited about that. I mean, and I have to tell you personally, the Fridays for me has been a thing that we've wanted for 10 years, and we haven't been able to get to. So that was huge, and I thank all of you for that. The challenges we're facing. We, like everybody else, are having trouble hiring, and we are looking at strategies for long-term and short-term so that we can be able to not just obtain folks and add them to our workforce, but also retain them. And that is one of the huge challenges we're seeing. As we've added our staff back after the hiring freeze, we've been promoting from within. And as we promote from within, we're trying to add people. The combination of what's going on in our society right now and retirements and a number of other things, we're really, I'm sure like the parks, we're seeing some pretty interesting challenges with that. Don't want to speak for you guys, but
Just a quick question on the hiring and the staffing. Is there currently a program within the public libraries to say, like, if there's any college students at some of the universities who may be English majors or library science majors doing some kind of internship so that they get college credit and y'all are getting manpower?
there's not, and it's funny you should mention that because we were talking just this week about how we need to create some programs, something like you're talking about over where we mentor and do some homegrown type of things.
I mean, that'd be a great for your short term, but then now you've got people that you can hire once they're graduated.
That was my question. Do you know, do local universities have a library science major?
MTSU does and Tennessee does.
The TSU?
Yeah. No, MTSU.
Right, and
TSU
UT.
does not. No.
Used to.
So not Tribeca,
It's UT,
Lipscomb,
no.
TSU?
And graduate library programs are not common. I mean, they're not throughout the country, and they're typically by region. The fact we have two in the state is actually a little bit unusual.
Go ahead and give it to
So,
So as to employment requirement though, if somebody wants to, work at a library, then you don't require a master's degree in library
we don't,
science? Okay.
and actually, we're going back and really looking at the classifications that we have, and if we're requiring too much education or too high of requirements for some jobs, because you can have skills that directly allow you to do a great job in a particular location without necessarily having a higher credential degree. So we're looking at that whole thing. It's something that we've got to do. So, and security, just not that we're having serious security incidents, but we're seeing the public act out in our facilities just as we're seeing throughout the country. We haven't seen the shootings, obviously, but and the homeless discussion is interesting to us because we do work with the homeless population on a regular basis. And we're seeing, the mental illness and the addiction and that sort of thing, and dealing with those folks. So security is a big issue. And then the last thing that is the big issue that our board has actually identified is one of the largest issues, if the not largest issue for us, is our facilities master plan and maintenance of our infrastructure and being able to continue to add new facilities and replace facilities. And during our board study session this summer, they actually said this is the thing. In part of the capital plan that you have before you, there is some infrastructure money for the library, both for the branches and the main library. And to give you an idea of the specifics at the main library, we need a new HVAC system. We need new VAV boxes, which are the automated control boxes in the ceiling. We need new lighting systems that are all software, and that means entire replacement. We need a new roof at Main. We need new elevators at Main. The courtyard needs major repairs because it's actually leaking into the parking garage, and there's some serious issues there. In the branches, we're looking at major HVAC replacements that are huge throughout the system, and roof replacements throughout the system. Yes?
And can I ask, have you, Council Lady Gamble was here for, our ARP committee. We've just seen coming through from MNPS, right? And we had asked questions of Mr. Profit, who's in their engineering and building, the UV light, the filters in that kind of COVID space, right? You
Yeah.
want to improve airflow. Have you all thought of approaching finance and going through that process to fund some of your HVAC stuff?
We are actually, we were in the the HVAC bill that passed last night.
Thank you, I
So,
apologize. I didn't-
No, that's okay, that's
Yeah.
good, and actually, we've got a lot of air scrubbers and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So that was a great question. And just to give you an example of what we're looking at with infrastructure, Pruitt right now, we're seeing cracks in the actual HVA return systems there. And we're placed in a position right now, do we repair it for a certain amount? Or do we try and replace it? And if we replace it, there'll be a 6-month waiting list for the HVAC system. So that would mean closing it. So, I mean, those are the kinds of issues we're dealing with. I don't anticipate closing it. And then the other piece is that we have a replacement scheduled to replace our branches. And we've prioritized those. We need funding for that, and it's Richland Park, Hadley, Thompson Lane, Murfreesboro Road corridor, and Inglewood. And what you're seeing in all of those particular locations is you're seeing basically mid-century buildings that desperately need to be replaced. And, we've already completed renovations at a number of the regionals, Edmondson Pike, Bordeaux, North and East, to name a few of those. But we need to get to work on this list, and that is the huge thing for us right now. Yes.
How do you prioritize?
When we completed the study, we piggybacked on Nashville Next. And we looked at growth and need within the communities, also the age of the buildings and whether the buildings were large enough to be meeting the needs of the community. And Hadley is a great example of that. Hadley's probably, it's one of the oldest, and not other than the Carnegies in our system.
Exactly,
And it's probably a fourth of the size that it needs to be.
exactly.
And that's why it's at the top, along with Richland Park, Thompson Lane, Murfreesboro Road, that whole area. Thompson Lane's that same era building. Donaldson's being replaced because it's in that space as well, and maybe a little bit older, although I think Hadley is slightly older than that. But I mean, that's what we're looking at, is that those buildings are not, you cannot renovate them. You get into asbestos and some other things, so it's really at a point that we need to start replacing these buildings. And they're costing us more to maintain than they will in a lifetime to replace, so. But I was trying to keep this succinct, and because I know you guys have a long evening, and I was here last evening too, so I know.
Well, I definitely appreciate you taking the time to come and speak to us about this. If there's any other questions, I know we're running out short on time. I'm sure he'll be happy to take any emails. I appreciate this, and again, it's part of my plan to make sure we know what's going on, so when it does come budget season, these different departments that are served by our committee are coming up with these requests. We know the why and the how. So if there's any other departments that you think will fall under our purview that you would like to see, again, shoot me an email and I will work with council office to try and get them scheduled. So with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.